So this morning, the washes have kind of dried out a little bit. So some areas over the last couple days that have been a little harder to get to just because of standing water or something in the washes. It's drained out a little more, so it's a little more accessible. So this morning, I'm exploring some parts of the washes that I've yet to see. Some of the fall colors, a mixed bag. Some of it, there's some oaks here that looks like it's just about done right behind me. Then right next to it be a green tree, so it's kind of all over the place at the moment. But I'm tucked away in a corner of the wash. It's got these big sandstone cliffs. And behind me here is this itty bitty little sapling that's growing out of the wall. That's what grabbed my attention. It looks to be a box elder tree by the shape of the leaves, but correct me if I'm wrong. But despite being just a little guy, it is showing a little bit of fall color. Starting to turn a little yellow, so I'm into that. But the yellows and the greens seem to contrast really well, especially just being this one little sprout sticking out of the corner. And the wall's got all kinds of interesting textures. So like these slats right here, I've included those in the corner. They kind of work for lead-in lines, as well as there's a little bit of like a fracture line that walks up the wall here. So both of those elements are kind of coming out of the corners in my frame. And of course you got a focal point here in the very corner with the box elder tree. I was really trying to keep this patch of mossy stuff out of the frame. I was moving the camera all over the wash, left to right, forward to back, all over the place trying to see if I could get it positioned to where I could disinclude that. But in the end, I just kind of had to embrace it. So I may or may not be impressed with that on the final film, negative or positive in this case, since I'm shooting color reversal. But other than that, the rest of the lichens and stuff are all just kind of details and stuff that I think add to it, especially down here. If it was just one solid color, it might not be so interesting. I am under absolutely crystal clear blue skies, and there's not much reflected light to speak of. I have just an itty bitty little bit of a light source back here, but there's not a ton of reflected light down here, so I'm expecting this will probably go a little blue, which is okay, because there are a lot of warm tones. But with that in mind, I did go ahead and put up my 81B warming filter. And it's kind of funny when you look through the filter, because I was actually metering through it to see how much I wanted to compensate for it, which is usually about 2/3 of a stop, but sometimes I adjust that depending on the scene. In this case, I only went 1/3 additional exposure, because it did knock down the highlights a little bit more than the shadows, and I was okay with that. So I just went with 1/3. But when you're looking through it like that, it's like tinted sunglasses, and then you look away and you realize that, yeah, it really does look blue. Of course, your eyes just adjust to it, but it was just interesting looking through it. It does look much better. So I think it's a good choice. Go ahead and use that. So I took 2 exposures, one on Provia 100F, and that exposure was 4 seconds, f32. And then I decided maybe I wanted to see what this looked like in Velvia too. So I did an exposure on Velvia 50, which is a stop more. So that's 8 seconds plus reciprocity failure. That put me at 11 seconds, f32. I had to use just a little bit of front swing because I'm taking a side profile of this canyon, which is kind of drifting off. So I had a swing to match my plane of focus and just a touch of front tilt. Not too much because I am kind of angling up a little bit again too. And the reason for that is to try to get the composition so I could try to avoid some things in the bottom I wanted to disinclude. So I was looking up just a little bit. But I'm happy to have one shot down for the morning already. This wash is beautiful, so I'm going to continue on and see what else I can find. So here's a look at those shots, and as always, let me know what you think down in the comments. Here's a sheet of Provia on the left and the Velvia on the right. And while both of these went pretty blue, as I kind of figured they might, the Velvia has more magenta in it, which pushes it closer to the purple side of the blues and places it squarely 180 degrees opposite on the color wheel from the lime greens in the sapling. So not only does the Velvia have more color contrast than the Provia, I actually couldn't separate them any further from each other if I tried. I do like the overall diagonal flow of the sandstone coming downwards from the top right, and the way it's interrupted by the fracture line coming from the bottom right, but I'm still struggling with this patch of moss. As of recording this, I haven't actually processed this image just yet, but I may try to remove that in post, or crop it out, or a combination of both. But either way, I was happy with the way both of these turned out, but as so often is the case, Velvia won me over with the additional boost in color and tonal contrast. But here's my edit, and as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. One of the things that impresses me every time I come here is just how much it changes from year to year. Not only, you have flash floods that come through here and rearrange stuff, but then you have, different displays of color. And yeah, it's just kind of interesting to walk past previous compositions and think nothing of it, Might have been good last year, and I decided it was a photo there, but then this year it doesn't look like much of anything. And then there's other stuff, that I never noticed before. It's just interesting how active this whole area is, how much it changes. That's good, though. Keeps it fresh and new. This one certainly has an element of experimentation in it. Every so often you get into these parts of this wash that start to slot up. So I'm in one of those areas. And at the very top of it's getting hit with some really, really nice light right now. So it's all reflecting down into the canyon. And the entire canyon floor is glowing with reflected light right now. Now the reason I say it's a little bit experimental is because I'm including the footpath. There's a bunch of sand here that's been kind of stepped down and walked on. There's a lot of footprints and stuff in the foreground. But if I try to cut this off right here and just frame further up, it just didn't look right. It was kind of hard to tell what you're even looking at. So decided to embrace it and just embrace the footsteps. Kind of has a human element to it, which isn't something I normally do. And things I do like about it is it kind of wraps around to the left over here. It adds an element of mystery, I suppose, since you can't really see exactly where it goes. But you got this gorgeous light on the very top, and I'm included just a little bit. It's probably overexposing a bit in the video. That's the main focal point, but that's radiating down onto the whole side of this wall that's right behind me, right here. You can see it kind of glowing. And that's kind of what I was really after. I'm actually exposing right now. My stopwatch is going. I'm on timed exposure mode on my shutter right now. And that exposure is going to be done here in about 10 seconds. And that's the end of it. So that was my second exposure, both of them on Kodak Ektar 100, because the dynamic range is extremely high. The shadows are very, very dark down here, and it's dark in this whole canyon anyway. And then the highlights are, 7+ stops higher than the dark and the shadows. So no good for color reversal. So color negative it is. There are several challenges that come along with shooting a subject like this. Of course, you see the walls are pretty close to me right here, and then it travels all the way down the distance, which makes the depth of field a real issue. So I don't expect that I got everything perfectly in focus, even though I've stopped down quite a ways. So like this ledge here, and the very side of this right here will probably be slightly soft, and that's okay because they're probably going to be dark too. They're probably not going to be quite as bright in the composition. And really what I want is your eye to go to the center, like where you would walk. That's the focal point. So that's the part that I focused on. I used a little bit of front tilt because the walls do go really high. So I was trying to make sure that it got top to bottom sharpness, but I wasn't so much worried about side to side, if that makes sense. But I think that's all I want to do on this one because I was a little shaky on the composition anyway. I almost kept walking and didn't even set up on it. So if it turns out, good. If not, oh well. But in any case, let's take a look at the exposures and let me know what you think. So this exposure on the right is the sheet that I was exposing when I was talking to the camera. It was a little bit of an experiment. It didn't turn out so well, so we're just going to forget about that one. I guess you'll never really know the limits unless you test them, but I think I found them. If I do a quick inversion for the video so we can see what's going on, I like the way the crack on the top right corner, combined with the bottom edges of the wash, all come out from near the corners. That combined with all the lines in the sandstone really guides your eye into the center of this composition. Of course, your eye is attracted to the brighter part of the image as well, and I like the way that light source bounces off the canyon walls. It's unusual for me to include something like the footpath,
since that's usually something I would try my hardest to get rid of. But in this case, it just didn't work without it. And I suppose that it makes it easier to imagine actually being there and walking through this canyon. I wouldn't say that this is my favorite photo from my trip, but it was well worth shooting. I think it turned out as good as it could. But here's my edit, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
This one isn't really fall color at all. And I think that's okay. Sometimes walking through these washes here, you'll see things that aren't necessarily pretty colorful leaves or something, but there'll be interesting things that I'll see on the walls, these sandstone cliffs. And that's what I've come across here. So in this case, I've got a chunk of this wall that's kind of jutting out a little bit, creates this interesting shape. Behind it's got some cracks and, lines. Looks like where maybe some of this is chipped off over time. And then smack dab in the middle is this bush. No idea what kind of bush it is. Maybe you can let me know. So as I was walking past this earlier today, I just took a snapshot with my phone as a scouting photo. And this afternoon I didn't really have anything pressing that I wanted to shoot, so I figured I'd come back and clean up this one. There's a few challenges with this one. One being this rock face is not only do I have to keep my plane of focus going up, but it tilts this way. So it's got some weird geometry to it. But also the fact that I've got this rock interest in the foreground that's sticking out means that I've got, probably a foot or so of depth, maybe 2 feet of depth before it hits the back. So there's depth of field issues here all over. So careful camera positioning, of course, but I was trying to frame the shape without getting any of the wash below, because there's just a lot of kind of messy looking mud and stuff. Not even really cool textures, it's just mud. And then some white rocks that just kind of are distracting. So I haven't included the entire shape. I've cropped in just a little bit on the bottom and the side too, so that it isn't just the shape standing out from the background, kind of stuck in the corner of the frame. But probably the thing that drew my attention to it the most is you have these diagonal lines running across the frame, which I think is cool. And of course you got the bush in the middle, which is the point of interest. Add to that these lines and little crack looking things in the background. I thought it'd make for a pretty cool photo. So framed up on this one with my 180mm Fujinon f5.6 lens. I had to walk the tripod forward just enough to make sure I had just the right framing that I was going for here. But it fit pretty easily within that 180mm. Now, because of the multiple issues with focusing here, I don't expect to get everything pin sharp here. I try to apply a little bit of shift and front tilt to get as much of it as I could, in focus, but I'm not too worried if the background goes a little bit soft. I think the point of interest clearly is the middle of the frame and this diagonal. Anything else, obsessing over it too far, doesn't meaningfully add to my quality of life. But I've taken 2 exposures on this, one on Provia 100F, and that exposure was 4 seconds at f32. And then I took a second shot on Velvia 50. And with reciprocity added in, that was 11 seconds at f32. Once again, I got a lot of sky color that's reflected into my scene here. So I'm a little worried about it going too blue. So I went ahead and dropped in my 81B warming filter, especially since one of my exposures is Velvia. Trying to pull that back a little bit, keep it from going too blue. I thought it was a nice little scene to come shoot. No reason not to. I got plenty of film on me. And I thought it was an interesting subject. But here's those exposures. And as always, let me know down in the comments what you think. Of course, the Velvia image went a little more colorful, as seen here on the right, and the blacks are a little deeper, adding to the contrast in the scene. But I think both Provia and Velvia captured this scene beautifully.
Again, Velvia has a little more of a bluish purplish cast to it with the additional magenta, but I certainly don't think it looks bad at all. I think the use of diagonal lines here works well with the scratches in the background up here that kind of sprawl out towards the corner. And the small bush and the rock feature help provide a focal point. And despite my concerns over depth of field, I think the sharpness turned out perfectly acceptable from corner to corner. And I'm overall pretty happy with this as an addition to my collection. Here's my edit, and as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button down below if you enjoyed this video. And special thanks to my Patreon patrons. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps me make more videos just like this one. If you want to make sure you catch the rest of the videos from Zion this year, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Like and subscribe.